Gentlemen, it's so good to see you in person. Like I said, we've done this online. If you follow us on GalaxyCon and GalaxyCon Live, I had the pleasure of hosting these men virtually on the interwebs, and we finally get to do it in person. So great to see you all guys here today in the flesh. Okay, good.
What was the question?
It was just nice to see you all here in person.
Oh.
Because we've all been doing it on the computer, and I'm much smaller than I am on the computer.
For those of you who really want to collect a piece of history, like right now, a couple of universities, one in particular, for about a year, has been looking at all the movies, British, French, some Scandinavian, all American movies back to the beginning of time, okay? They cannot find another single so-called full-length feature. Live actors, animated bananas, they can't find anything. Back to the beginning of theater time, where three of the principles of a major classic film that was released 81 years ago, which means we had to work on it before them, still alive and together. History on this platform.
So let's go back to the beginning. How did Bambi begin for each of you? Doctor, why don't you start us off?
It was just mentioned about the movie Bambi. I think many of you may know that it's been deemed to be an epic movie and was introduced into the Library of Congress this past year. So we're so excited to be part of the cast, and this is really the second time that the three of us have been together at a convention. And to me, it's exciting. These two gentlemen have some Hollywood background. Not so I. I disappeared after the movie came out in 1942 and just was resurrected a year ago. They found the voice of Flower the Skunk, and here I am.
And you were right next door to the Disney studios, pretty much.
Where I lived was in the Los Feliz district of Los Angeles. I was not too close to Disney, but my best friend actually lived across the street from him. And we used to go there frequently. Back in those days, you didn't have television sets. So in high school, he had one of the few. So we would go visit and periodically run across Walt Disney and his two daughters.
So do you want to know how I got started?
Of course. I've heard the story, but I want our audience to know.
Well, my father was a screenwriter in Hollywood, actually starting with the silent movie era and finishing up with Howard Hughes's movie called Hell's Angels. And so being in Hollywood, my father heard about Disney's movie that was going to be a major production, and that there was an audition actually for the part of Bambi. So I was one of those kids who was there doing the audition, and if you've seen the movie and you know what Thumper sounds like, it wasn't what Bambi was supposed to sound like, so I was rejected immediately. However, later the animators were listening to all of the voices from the auditions, and one of the animators heard my voice, and they said, "Hey, that kid'd be great for the rabbit." And that was it. There were never auditions for Thumper. That was already picked. So that's how I got started.
That's steady. All right, sir.
And I'm so glad they did, because I have stolen some of his lines with orphanages and children coming out of a bad conduct, you know. If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all, right? We could use a little of that in this country. How I got started? Oh, my God. I've been in 8 movies as a child from age 4 and a half to 5 and a half, almost 5 and a half. Boom, boom, one after the other. How many of you seen Son of Frankenstein? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah? I'm that little runt kid with all that curly hair. Son of Frankenstein. So I'm the grandson of Frankenstein.
Yes, you are.
And we've been several movies, of course, and we had enough out of the Depression, earning some money. Big Depression, helped people come out of Ireland. We have our first little house. We're not squat. We're very careful with our money, and making a ton compared to good folks at the time. But I hadn't been in a film for three and a half months, okay? And 2 more months to go for some Western thing that never happened because of Pearl Harbor later. And in the kitchen, we had telephones, they were first-class telephones mounted on the wall with a tube, huh? Remember those in the pictures? And an earpiece. Disney called my mother. Now, Disney does not mind at all my being 1,000% straight with all this stuff, okay? Disney called my mother personally. We didn't know Disney from peanut butter. I'd never been to a movie. We're working all the time. But my mother was astute enough to pick up on the Disney name. She was very courteous to everybody, certainly was to Mr. Disney. His offer was, would like, this is not verbatim, but constructive. The offer was, would like to have Donnie come to the studio, our new studios, Burbank, California, so we can test him for facial expressions to put a child's face on a small deer. Now, I can remember later realizing why. If you've already seen small deers, they're not like Bambi, okay? They're like this, right? They wanted to put a kid's dynamics on the facial model. So, my mother said yes. Oh, boy. Yeah, we thought it was just a little short cartoon. We didn't know any better, right? Mother said, yes, okay, let's go. She called my agent. Now, the ladies in the audience here are policing up my vocabulary for what I thought about this agent. You don't want to hear that one, okay? He's been our agent for 6 or 7 films, kind of a pompous so-and-so out of New Jersey or New York. 3-piece suit, I think he went to bed in it. He came to the house. My mother said, Mr. Disney, so-and-so, so-and-so has invited Donnie to go do some artwork, facial artwork. In what? In a movie called Bambi. He immediately thought it was a cartoon. I would not be here with you wonderful people if this next thing had not happened. He was very strong with my mother. I can't do that, can't do that. In our household. Now, I didn't box yet. I was too young. I wasn't in the Marine Corps yet. I was too young. But I had some man respect character, okay? He's being very rude to my mother. I had just seen one of the directors or assistant directors fire somebody because he was a so-and-so too, right? He's being very mean to my mother. Mother said, he can do it if he wants to. Then he looked at me and said, you want to do that? Yes. No, you can't do that. They were very rude to my mother. I fired him. Age 5. I fired him. You can't do that, you can't do that. My mom, I love her, my mom said, he's paying your wages. So, you're fired. Oh, he got to the driveway, a car with a hood the size of a football field, laid rubber and left. A couple of days later, we were guests at Disney. Mr. Disney came out of a building and met us in the parking lot. Not like a pompous executive smirking around. He had his sleeves rolled up. I didn't know who he was, you know. He greeted us well, and everything took off from there. Okay? And had I not fired that so-and-so, remember, ladies, I'm being proper? If I had not fired that so-and-so, none of that would have happened.
Absolutely. During the making of Bambi, do you guys have any recollections? Because I know some of you might have during the actual recording and stuff like that. And I think recorded on vinyl, as I recall. I think one of you says that they.
Were about yay big.
Yeah.
And a big arm that comes over and cut the vinyl.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah. So yes, Peter, do you have any recollections of actual recording?
Actually, my most vivid recollection of the movie was the recording studio and the interaction with the director who was in the studio. I wasn't exactly reading at age 4 yet. I know some people do that, but I wasn't. Anyway, the director would, excuse me, would give the line with all the inflection and everything that they wanted, and then I'd repeat it back, and if it wasn't quite right, we'd do it again, and the director did all kinds of funny stuff to make me laugh. You may recall Thumper laughs a little bit, and so that it was a fun, interactive kind of situation, and I was fascinated by the equipment. I'm sort of not an engineer, but I'm an engineer type, and so that was very memorable. Then there was another time they had a little mini zoo or a few animals that they had so the artists could see the configuration of deer and rabbit, etc., and skunks. And so we visited that a couple of times, and that was kind of fun. But anyway, those are my main.
Doctor, do you have any?
I might add a couple of things to what I first said about not being in Hollywood. Everybody has asked, well, how the heck did you get to be in the movie Bambi? And the story is that when I was 6, maybe I was just 5 at the time, but they asked me if I wanted to be in a movie. It was my Sunday school teacher. And I, being a shy 6-year-old, my answer was no. I didn't really think that was going to be much fun. And my uncle, who was there, told my parents, and they talked me into going to Disney Studios. So we headed on over to Disney, and my father and mother along with me, and they had no idea who I was. They had no idea who my Sunday school teacher was or who my parents was or why we were there, except that they did admit later they were still auditioning for one part. And so then I recall going into a big sound stage. At 6, everybody looks huge, and everything there looked huge, even the microphone. And then they read a few lines to me, and I repeated them, and then it came back through a sound booth, which was up on the wall, and the voice came back, which I was sure was not mine. I'd never heard my recorded voice before. But after a couple things, they said, that's fine. In order to get the job, of course, I had to go to Superior Court and get approval for working as a juvenile. But it was worth it. I got a huge amount of money. We got paid $30 an hour, and I would have 30-minute sessions, so I would get a big check for $15. And I put that in a bank account, only to find that I couldn't get it out of the bank account without my parents' approval. As far as how I reconnected after 80 years of being in the flowers bed somewhere, these two guys were at an exhibition, and one of the agents who was working with them were mentioning that they couldn't find who Flower was. Well, that was overheard by another young actress, at that time, Mitzi Gibbons. And she mentioned that, well, actually, he was a fraternity brother of her ex-husband. And that was enough of a lead, so I got a telephone call out of the blue asking if I was Stan Alexander and if I was the voice of Flower the Skunk. And of course, the answer was yes. So now I have a new door that's open, a very exciting one. And also, I'm finding out that these two gentlemen from Hollywood backgrounds are very nice guys to know. I'm very pleased to be part of the triumvirate. And we'll find out a little bit more as time goes on.
So, Peter, how'd they track you down? Or were you always kind of on the radar still?
No, I wasn't. Like Donnie, once we'd finished with doing Bambi, for the next 40 years, almost nobody knew what I had done. And, you know, at that point, you sort of almost forget it yourself until something clicks that brings it all together. And I was living in Vermont at that time in a little town named Warren. And if you think about where rabbits live, they live in a warren. So it was sort of a strange circumstance. But anyway, a couple of my friends did know what I had done. And one of them was in Florida at the time, and Disney was decided with one of the anniversaries that was coming up, they wanted to find all of us probably, but anyway, they put a little ad in some Florida newspaper, and for whatever reason, my friend discovered it and then brought it back to me and said, Disney's looking for you. You know, give them a call, and I did. And that's how it occurred. But I still, and you know, then I went out to that reunion or anniversary. But I still never broadcast around. Yeah. When I was courting my wife, current wife, who's my second wife, it was probably 6 months or a year before she ever knew that I had even done that. It wasn't my first way to get her interested in me. I had to do it on my own.
Right.
So anyway, that's a little of the back. Oh, one last thing I'd like to say. Donnie's been in several movies. I was in a movie before Bambi when I was 2 years old. It was a movie called Jungle Juveniles. A producer named Pete Smith made a whole bunch of sort of humorous 10-minute movies that were often, in those days they had a lot of double features. You went to the movies, it was an all-day event, and in between the features there, they had some newsreels, since we didn't have TV in those days, and they would have a humorous or a short subject, as they called them. And I was a little boy lost in a jungle and found by two chimpanzees. And I had a little suitcase, and I was wandering around in a knit suit. And the chimpanzees took me under their wing and made me climb up in a tree. And the whole incident, it was narrated by Pete Smith, and it was pretty humorous, and there were three of them. And one of them I was riding on the back of an elephant, which is kind of cool. And the elephant has really coarse bristles on it, so they put adhesive tape in a patch like that on the back of the elephant, so my little tender 2-year-old legs wouldn't get messed up. Anyway, sorry, it's a little digression.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And you, of course, a whole career in the Marines, and again, thank you for your service. But you wanted, you have an interesting story about how you didn't want Major Bambi to be discovered.
Oh my God. Oh golly. I'll try to abridge this to the main points with you. Everybody that has discovered this has been teasing me about how in the dickens could you do all that schooling, and how in the dickens could you do 25 years in the Marine Corps with a whole lot of promotions, and nobody knew about all those movies, particularly Bambi, and how about Son of Frankenstein? Right? We came out of the Great Depression before any of the movies. Economic conditions today, when they're adverse, can't not compete with the Great Depression of 1929, okay? We had dirt, double dirt poor. I won a talent contest as a little runt kid by luck, and a talent scout in Tennessee was in the audience because his mother was there ill, and that was his only break. So he came. People went to talent shows in those days, folks. You're so young, I love you, I wish I was your age. Went to talent shows and the spelling bees because they were bored and broke. I mean, these audiences were loaded. So here's this guy, and he was from RKO Studios, After the show, he got a hold of my mom and dad. We were in one little room place we lived, and my mom and dad believed him. He had credentials. 2 days later, we got a one suitcase between us. We're on our way from Memphis, Tennessee. I was not born there. We were there to work. Memphis, Tennessee to Los Angeles. Okay, lucky, incredible, lucky man. Let me digress for a second before I give you the extra punch on this one. You folks, because I'm in my 90th year, I've done a ton of crazy stuff. I hope most of it good. Okay? Lots of committees, lots of assemblies, lots of school assemblies invited to, a lot of very, don't get mad at me about this one, boring and negative political business things. and civic, straight civic. In all the shows that we get a chance to go to, let me share this with you. The folks like you that want to go to see fresh, happy things and have a smile in your heart and have some fun without it being one of the many negatives in the world today are special to us. You're special to me, okay? I even wrote in my journal not long ago, if I ever see somebody in one of these shows like you walking by with a frown, I'm going to call the psychiatrist and have him pick him up. This is a smile group, and thanks for coming. At Bambi, I had no idea what the storyline was. I'm 5½, and I'm reading newspapers very well, despite things, good tutors. No school until the 7th grade, tutor, kind of steals your childhood. So I'm making a pest of myself, I bet you, about what is this about, what's this about? I'd never seen a deer. They hadn't given me the Bambi book to read yet. I could read pretty good. I kept, what is this about, what's this about? Finally, Mr. Disney, who was a wonderful man, a lot of time with me, he got a limousine with the hood as long as a football field and 2 assistants in suits and my mother, and took me to a zoo near Burbank. It couldn't be very far away. And in that zoo, so I want to see a deer, was one deer in a little pit, place as clean as a whistle. Now, unlike some of you that have not seen deers, young and see Bambi with all these wonderful people, okay? Here's the deer they wanted me to see so I can feel good about the storyline, right? Ready for this? In the pit, right there, like this. That was a statue. Yeah? One of the nice men went to a little machine and put a coin in and got me some corn. I think it was corn. Give it to me. This will excite him. Okay. Huh? I threw the corn out. Pretty good toss right in front of him. Here's the deer. Watch. That's it. This caused my mother a little heart attack. I turned to my mom and I said, quote, they got this in writing, quote, Mom, I don't want to be that guy. He's boring. Those 2 wonderful guys from Disney went back and ratted me out to Walter. 2 or 3 days later, I'm going down the hallway where I'm supposed to go for a change, do something. And here he comes, I think with his brother, not sure. But here comes Walt. I've been with him several times. And he puts his hand, we're coming opposite directions. He puts his hand out to slow me down, very courteous. And I stopped, you know, hi, sir. Put his hand on my shoulder. He says, we got you to the zoo. Yes, sir. And you saw a deer. Yes, sir. Johnny, I promise you, our deer, our Bambi, will not be boring. If my mother hears about this, I'm peanut butter for a month, you know.
And they were right. I would think so. Absolutely correct on that. I'm going to jump in the audience, take some of our audience questions. But before I do that, as always, Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here this weekend, and thank you for sharing all these recollections and coming on out. And it's such a remarkable journey I can't imagine something that I must have done 5 years old, and somebody tracking me down, everything else saying, please come out and talk about this. This is a lark. You've been a friend to the fans, and we so appreciate it so very much. So thank you again for being with us here this weekend and sharing all this stuff. Absolutely, absolutely. So what we'll do is I'm going to go take some questions. Also, before I do this, we'll let everybody know we have two interesting things going on at the end of this. One, we always take our stage selfie with everybody at the end. We're going to have that available for sale. We have also a special Animate frame of that too. Also, at the end of this, we are having a full photo op available with all three of these gentlemen right outside the door. There's a little photo station right on there. So if you're interested in getting a professional grade photo with all three of these guests, you have an opportunity to do that at the end of this. So keep that in mind and all that fun stuff. So, all right, let's take some hands. Who wants to go first? Whoever goes first gets 2 pieces. I'll take the one in the mask over here. Then I'll come to the peacemaker. All right. Hey, what's your name?
Autumn.
Hey, what do you want to know?
To all of you, what was the funnest thing about being on Bambi?
What was the most fun part about being a part of Bambi?
I already mentioned the part of the recording in the sound studio, and playing with the director, and the director was making me laugh and so forth, and that whole experience was just child's play, and that was fun.
I might add the most fun part for me was when my grandfather came to my elementary school and picked me up to go to Disney Studios. And as I walked out the door, I could see out of the corner of my eye that every eye in the classroom was on me. I think maybe a little jealous, but that was a lot of fun. When I did go to Disney Studios, they had a tutor there for the rest of the day, so I didn't get back to class. And so those are some of the memories, but just the whole process to me was a very interesting change in my direction in life, although I never did end up going. I'm still waiting to get my big break in the movies.
Let me try to give you an abridged, real heart answer in 2 phases. I never talked about the movies, many movies, lead with the end of it, Bambi, World War II, Pearl Harbor. All the schooling, supported myself at a boarding house since age 14. But I think you had a lot of money, didn't have any money. Okay? 14 to know. Bambi. Once they discovered I was still alive 21 years ago, everybody thought I was dead. Okay? I've been able to get more good things with Bambi, John, than all the medals and all the junk and all the degrees in the world. Okay, in a fundraiser in Arlington, in Paris, Texas, in Austin this last year, super folks in the audience like you, and we're trying to raise money for these charities that are desperate needed because of the COVID hammer and things, right? The host can say, and here's this jerk Donnie Dunagan has done these things, done these things, and people contribute. Oh, good. This happened several times. Then somebody, the host or somebody says, and by the way, how many of you remember Bambi or Frankenstein? People go, Bambi, Bambi, Bambi. He says, this guy was a facial model and the voice of Bambi. Bang! The contributions go up, boom. You know, it's incredible. That's my heart today for Bambi. Experience doing it. Remember, Disney says I can be straight. Some of it was kind of boring. I sat there, lady said, now say these things, and just a few words, so this image on this flip thing. Okay, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Over and over. The facial model part was a whole lot more fun. I sit on a stage, a small stage, and I'll steal lots of the artists, wonderful artists. Disney required them, for the first time, any theater, any movie studio, required the artist drawing the motions to be in oil, not watercolor. Nobody had ever done that before. Okay, that's what slowed the production down greatly. Okay, anyway, so excuse me. So remember the scene early in the film where Bambi does something kind of dumb, feels sorry for himself. He's in a thicket like this. Remember that? The artist says, I'm sitting on a stool. They've been asking me, look left, look right, look straight, hold it. One of the artists says, Donnie, something really terrible has happened to you. What do you think? It's really bad. What's happened? Oh, wait a minute. We pull ourselves out of the depression. I got folks coming in from Ireland based on these movies. I'm having a great time. What do you mean look bad, right? I tried to look bad. No good. Finally, some guy, Disney loves this in a little notebook they got. Finally, one of the artists says, Donnie, if you had something bad happen to you lately, your mom scolds you or give you something you don't want. Yes. What was it? My mother gave me 2 of those dose things of castor oil last week. Castor oil, right? Very bright guy says, Donnie, you just got a double dose right now of that castor oil. What do you think? I went, oh. So when you see that movie again, go do it, okay? And you see that, and little Feline sticks her head in through the thicket. Huh? Little Feline became Mrs. Bambi later. Little Feline sticks her head through the thicket and does this to him, remember? And he goes, ooh. Huh? It's a castor oil scene. And that's because Disney had not discovered girls yet.
Very nice, very nice. I wanted to come back up and show this is the frame that you'll get if you decide to elect to do one of the photo ops after this. And guy in the Peacemaker shirt. Yes, hey, what's your name?
Louis. Sorry. As the grandson of a Vietnam and Korean veteran, I want to thank you for your service, Mr. Dunagan. And my question is, after you did acting in the 40s, like, did you ever consider returning after your time in the service, or even to all of you on the stage?
Did you ever think of going back into to full acting once your service to the country was done?
Ah, good question. I've been asked that before. Thank you. I can give you a sophisticated baloney answer. I'm going to give you a straight answer. I never thought about it. Still in the Marine Corps, as a company battalion commander, in 1 year and a half between Vietnam tours, so-called tours, I'm in Norfolk, Virginia, a very sophisticated international intelligence, Department of Defense Intelligence Center, and there was a wonderful playhouse in the town there, live stage theater, okay? And they were I heard they're having a hard time getting men to rehearse for roles in Shakespearean plays. And hey, I don't have anybody shooting at me now. This job is all intellectual, but just over at 5 o'clock, you know. So I went down and visited with them. They didn't know nothing about the movies, didn't know about Bambi, and did what we would call a rehearsal or a trial or something. Macbeth and a couple of others. And they discovered I could imitate Winston Churchill as part of the audition, and did 4 different stage plays in major roles with packed audiences, and most of the money going to local charities. Okay, then that got around to some of the Marine Corps people, and I kept getting asked about what's the deal with Churchill. What? What's this Churchill stuff? Sir, never in the field of human endeavor have so many owed so much to so few. Now, what else do you want to know?
Peter, after this, I mean, you had a pretty successful career, but you ever have any sort of creative side pursuits you ever thought about doing? Anything on the side?
No. No, when I was in grammar school, I was the voice of Mikado in one of Gilbert and Sullivan's things, but that was pretty much it. If I could just have a moment to digress, I'd like to comment on two things about the movie that we have not talked about yet. One is that, well, you know we have a lot of environmental things going on in the world, and not just in the United States, but the world, and there are activists and so forth. I'd just like to point out that Disney was basically just about the first environmentalist to come along, and he kind of started the movement. You think about the movie, man and his campfires and his guns did not come out as the top nicest person in the world, and unfortunately there are a lot of people who aren't the nicest people in the world, but that and the movie itself was the fire scene and so forth. To me, that's the scariest part of the movie and the most dramatic. The other thing I'd like to mention about the movie that I think a lot of people don't pay attention to, and that is the background art. The art was done by a Japanese-American artist, Tyrus Wong, and who unfortunately is now long gone, but his surrealist art, if you see the movie again, just focus on that background art, because it's separate from, it moves separately from the movie itself. They had a multi-plane camera that they could move the background separate from other parts of the movie, and it was a technological wonder at the time. So anyway, I love the background art so much. I really recommend you take a focus on it when you see the movie next time.
No, it's called a beautiful film for that reason, because it is truly beauty and accent and those background shots and absolutely everything else. So, Doctor, you didn't go into acting or whatever after all this, but you certainly had a very successful career in medical research, and you've done some novels as well. Can you tell us about that?
That's correct. Yeah, the word's, I guess, spreading. So don't go Google for it because it's not published yet. I wanted to add one thing to what Danny said, or to Peter said, about being in a movie at 2. And it was a home movie, and it shows me in a high chair and my cousin coming and stealing my milk bottle from me. So maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't look at movies as a career move. And then Danny talked about used the word of having I forget the word that you used, but having some ambition. And I think that's important. I decided in the 7th grade that I was going to go into medicine, and I never detoured from that. And I went to UCLA for undergraduate. I got a degree in zoology, and people said, well, why did you pick zoology? And I said, well, if I didn't get accepted to medical school, maybe I could become a beekeeper. You always have to have a second option. And then I went to my crosstown rival USC for med school and interned at Tufts University, and then I had my residency at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and then back to Southern California. But I think having some goals is important for you to pick out at a young age, because you can always change your pathway if it doesn't seem to be working out for you. But it is very important. And I also wanted to mention about movies in general. I said that I'd never been in another movie after that, but I had when I was at UCLA. My fraternity was SAE. Next to it was the Delt House, and the cook at the Delt House is the one who had the connections with Hollywood. So if we wanted to be in something, we'd go talk to them about getting a little extra money. And so many from my fraternity ended up in the background at Blackboard Jungle. If you remember that movie, that's the one that featured the song "Gonna Rock Around the Clock All Night," which was probably the very first rock and roll tune that ever became popular. So that was a little extra fun that I had, but I never really got back on the pathway again. But you need to have goals when you're young, and you never know if you get called by your Sunday school teacher or somebody to be in a movie. Be available and say yes.
Absolutely. We are just about at time, but we are actually going to do another one of these tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We're going to be back in here with these gentlemen and also with Margaret Carey, the model for Tinkerbell and other stuff. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Disney legacy and some of the other shows. I wanted to focus today on your individual experiences with Bambi and stuff like that, but I just want to say thank you once again. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and because again, you've come back at this stage of your life to come to these conventions and everything else, which must have been pretty bewildering at first. But you've been a friend to these wonderful fans, and on behalf of myself and our audience, thank you.